Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you are watching this live here on YouTube. You'll have to forgive me. I'm going to make sure that I have everything correctly set up here. This is our first week in the brand new studio here at Better Agency HQ. So it's going to take me just a second just to get everything put together. Beautiful. Hope everybody's having a fantastic start to their week. It is Wednesday. This is our 6th episode, and I think that this is really, really cool. So I'm really glad that everybody is here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And we are going here. I need more screens is what I need off camera. We have an interesting topic tonight, and we're going to get right into it here. I was asked this week about buying and selling agencies. It was something that had come up. People were wanting to know, and we see this question a lot. I've seen this question a lot. If you've been in the insurance industry for any length of time, you've seen people start to wonder about how do they buy agencies. They look at acquisition as a strategy, and it certainly is. It's a great strategy to grow. And people want to know, where do I find these agencies? How do I locate them? What should I be looking for? How do I get people to want to sell me their agency? And I can speak a little bit about this. This was something that I've gone through now more than once. And so I felt like there was a little bit of context, things that as you go through that process, you learn a little bit and you start to understand how the game is played a little bit. Here's what I'll say about this. And before we get into it, I want to, if you're new to the channel, this is how this will work. I've put a link in the chat. If you want to join our Zoom crowd where we can have Q&A back and forth, we can do that. Other than that, if you just want to feel content watching on YouTube, thank you so much for doing so. You can post your questions in the chat. I will answer them. If you want to have a discussion one way or the other, I like to bring people on Zoom just because I feel like it's easier to have a conversation. And I feel like there is a lot of value in a live Q&A or a live dialogue. So here's my thoughts about agency acquisition. Number one, I think it has to be, if you're really going to do this, it has to be an all-in strategy. You can't meddle with acquisition. You might, if you're in this game for any period of time, you're going to fall into an agency maybe here and there, perhaps. But really, I think acquisition, if you're saying that this is the strategy that I want to deploy, I think it has to be an all-in proposition. So when it becomes an all-in proposition, the way that you think about who you hire, how you run an agency, all of that changes. All of it shifts from what might be a traditional model of agency growth. And what I mean by that is it's very possible that you never, ever, ever have to hire traditional producers. It's possible, if you play this all the way out to the extreme, that agency acquisition can be the only thing that you do for growth. Because it's a lot easier or subjectively better or faster to grow by adding 1,000 customers in a 3-month span, because maybe you buy an agency once a quarter, than it is to go right and prospect and do business. That's something that I know agencies do. And because of that, they're not hiring sales producers that they have to go and hunt new business and they got to go to this B&I mixer and they've got to go here, they got to go there. They're just saying, I'm going to acquire books of business. I happen to know one agency owner, a friend of mine, that's all he does. He's not worried about going out and writing new business. I mean, they'll take that when it comes, but their whole model is to go buy books of business that are maybe need a little bit of rehab. They need some love. Maybe there's processes in there that they need to fix or deploy. They want to go and systematize that agency. And then they either retain it or they flip it. So they buy it for a super low multiple, and then they go flip that agency for more once they establish some processes, get things turned around a little bit. I'm not saying this is what you have to do. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it. It is a way to do it. One of the things I really love about this industry is there's no right or wrong way on a lot of this. It's just preference. So let's establish the premise that acquisition has to be an all-in approach. You've got to be all in on this. And now, how do we do that? Well, once we've determined that growth comes by acquisition, we have established that strategy. We are going to grow by acquisition. Then it starts to frame who you hire and how you operate. And it really establishes the tactics you're going to use in order to find these businesses. You're not just going to find agencies just because you want to find agencies. You're going to find agencies because you put specific strategies in place. Here's an example. If I were running an operation where acquisition was my strategy, was my growth strategy, instead of hiring 2 or 3 producers, I'd hire maybe 1 person or 2 people whose sole responsibility is to go to every insurance event and network with other insurance agents, go to the Big I meetings, go to the state chapters, go to conferences, be active in Facebook groups where insurance agents hang out, and build relationships with people. And then part of that is maybe they travel, maybe they go and they go to Little Rock, Arkansas, or maybe they go to Boise, Idaho, and they take people out, and they are very intentional on what it is that they're looking for. They make it very well known that we are people that acquire. It's no different than what the hubs of the world do. It's very well known what they do. They don't shy away from it. And so think about hiring somebody to your staff that's all they do. They call on agencies. It's a weird way of thinking. Instead of calling on customers and trying to write, single line policies or accounts, they're calling on agencies, and they're calling on them to ask them questions, to solicit them. It's an outbound sales strategy to agency owners. The thing about our industry is that the average age of an agency owner is well into their 50s. That's the average age. So what you want to do, or what this person should do, is they should start to establish, no different than a regular sales pipeline, who the ideal agency fit is, who the ideal customer is, and then find metrics or ways to do outreach to those customers. You might say that our average agency owner age, the person that we want to target, has to be 55 and over. They have to be in this geography. They have to focus on this line of business. Segment the agencies accordingly, how it's going to fit into your profile. Don't just go buy an agency because you have the opportunity to. That's going to be detrimental. You don't really want to do that. But you want to find the right agencies that are going to be a good mix for you, that have a potential. You can think beyond just the sale. Another strategy is to do like my friend does, where he finds books of business that need rehab. And by rehab, I mean they're not paperless. So they have a lot of paper. They have filing cabinets. They don't have a website. They don't use an agency management system. They don't, they're not evolved, or maybe they're non-standard. And they go in there and they put things in place, they systematize it, and then you flip it. So the reason why you can rehab it is just like with real estate, you could buy it on a discount. An agency owner that's trying to get out of the industry, or out of the business, is going to be forced to take a lower multiple. So you do that, and then you put things in place, and then you flip it. That's a way to think about it. But all of this being said, when you're all in, it really means that you're being intentional on this approach, that you're going to have an outbound way of finding these agencies. Go to conferences. There's no reason why you shouldn't be at every conference, or have your person be at every conference to represent you, to make it known, right? Email, phone calls, in-person visits. If it's worth a lot to you, then the payoff is really great. And if you make it a goal that we're going to acquire 2 agencies, 3 agencies, 4 agencies this year, and maybe they have different characteristics, different makeup, then you can make this work, right? If you say we want to acquire books of businesses where the account size is 500 accounts and above, or 1,000 accounts and above, there's lots of those. You can find those. You can run Facebook ads to insurance agents, targeting them, soliciting that. There's all kinds of ways to get in front of people. Here's the other thing I'll also say, I think often gets overlooked, is it's not that I think, when I hear agents talk about wanting to find books of business, and by the way, if you're watching this, you have questions, make sure you comment down in the chat. Let me know what the questions are. Let's have a discussion as soon as we're done with the talking points here. Let me know what's on your mind or the things that you think about when it comes to acquisition. But I'll never forget, it was about 2013. That was a long time ago. 2013 feels like an eternity ago. And we were about 1 year into our new agency, Scratch Agency. We weren't big by any stretch of the imagination. We were piddly. We're nothing. We were nothing burger. And we got a postcard in the mail, and we had a solicitation that somebody wanted to talk about buying our agency. And I remember the feeling of validation that I felt. I felt great. I felt cool. Like somebody wanted to buy us. Now, in hindsight, they probably sent that out to 10,000 different agencies. We weren't anything special. But here's the point I'm trying to make. I think when I hear agency owners talk about acquisition, they're almost kind of shy about bringing it up. You don't want to offend somebody. You don't want to encroach on anything. It's almost like this territorial thing. You don't want to offend the person that you are trying to buy from. And so it doesn't get brought up. It's not intentional by any stretch of the imagination. And so, the old adage goes, you have not because you ask not. And so but the whole point about this is, don't be bashful, especially around newer agency owners. There's opportunity there where you might be able to get something that's growing, where you acquire a staff or a team or an operation, and you could probably get it rather, on the cheap. Up and coming emerging agencies. There's lots of them. And the people that you ask about buying, they're not offended. At least the right ones shouldn't be. They should almost feel flattered. So don't let that be a hesitation for you. And the last thing I'll say about acquisition, we'll talk about selling here in just a second. Last thing I'll say about acquisitions is it's still a relationship business. So all the things I've said up until this point is it's still very much a relationship business. You've got to make relationships with people. If the whole approach is just to spam out postcards and phone calls and emails, that's not going to get very far. It's still a one-to-one relationship business. When I sold my agency, I sold it to a person that I knew, that I trusted, that I liked a lot, because I knew that the book of business would be good or safe, or it'd be, well taken care of. The customers would be well taken care of. And that is how you need to approach people when looking to buy agencies. You can come at them all day long with high multiples, with a lot of money or enticing offers, and that will get you so far. But once you make it about a relationship with that agency owner and really caring for them and their book of business, the thing that they built, that's going to take you a lot further. And that requires a lot of work. That's just not something that happens overnight. So that's why it's probably not a bad idea to put somebody on your team whose sole responsibility is nurturing, is relationships, it's buddy-buddy, it's wine and dine. It's showing that you have what it takes to take care of what they did. So that's my thoughts on buying a book business. Now, let's talk about selling an agency, because there might be people who are watching this and you're thinking, well, I'm in the market to sell. I'm trying to get out of the business, or I want to cash out. The question inevitably becomes is, how do I cash out with the most amount of money possible? And I think there's a few things you have to think about when selling in order to prepare yourself. So maybe you're not even there now, but you're thinking in the next year or 2 years, I really want to be at a place where I can sell for the most amount of money. Just time of life, market, whatever the case might be. You want to get into Dogecoin, whatever the excuses might be. You want to get out. Here's a couple of things that you really need to do if you want to make sure you get the most amount of money. Number one, you need to be digital. Case in point, my friend who buys rehab books of business, he pays like a 1 or slightly above a 1x multiple for agencies who aren't paperless, who don't have their technology in the cloud or on the internet, who are behind the times. So when you think about your tech stack, when you think about your processes, you think about your operation, if it's not 100% digitized, you're taking a mark. It's like a demerit. So make sure that the technology that you use is internet friendly. Make sure that you don't have a ton of paper and filing cabinets. I know this might be basic, but you'd be surprised how many agencies still think this way. I was in an agency in Portland back in October. Person just bought it. And it was a room, about a 15 by 15 room of just filing cabinets. Like, these things still exist. It's amazing to me. If you want to make sure you get the most amount of money, don't make the next person who buys your agency have to scan all that work. It's going to be a markdown. The next thing I would say is you've got to show growth. If you want the most amount of money, you've got to show that you have systems and processes in place that have growth. And a lot of times what that means is you've got a decent referral strategy, you've got centers of influence in place, you are growing the agency. But more than that, as important as that, you can't be churning out customers. You can't be losing clients. You need to make sure you show good retention. Now, this is a 1 to 2 year process because it might take you time to steer the ship in the right direction. And you're gonna have to work on that. You're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to iterate on your processes. So make sure if you want to sell for the most amount of money, you put those 3 things into place. Good rule of thumb that I have seen is when it comes to multiples and valuations is anything under 500,000 in revenue. So your annual revenue, anything under 500,000 is typically a multiple. Anything over 500,000, you're typically going to be valued on EBITDA, which is, I'm gonna butcher the acronym. It's expenses, it's interest, tax, debt, all that stuff. Net profit. So depending on where you're at, really depends on what you're doing. Now, I've seen agencies recently go for as high as 3, 4, 5x multiples. I've seen them go for high valuations. Money right now is kind of cheap still, but it's getting more expensive by the day. So this gives you time as we see the market change and how financing works. It might mean that you keep on the agency for the next year or two, but this gives you time to kind of steer things, put things around where they need to be, and to improve where you want to go, so that in 2, 3, 4 years, however long it takes for things to kind of get back into a different type of market where you can sell for the most amount of money. That's what I have on acquisitions. That's what I have on that. It really is important that you make it a belly relationship business, that you make it an all-in strategy. You don't just hodgepodge your way around and tip your toe in the water of buying agencies. It's not going to happen. You might get one in your lifetime, like one's going to happen. But if you're really trying to grow and you want to make it a real part of your growth strategy and to add, now keep in mind, you should just anticipate a 20% at least cut off the top. People are going to cancel. People are going to leave. People don't want to be a part of mergers and acquisitions. They don't like that. It gives them excuses sometimes to shop, depending on the book of business, the nature of the lines of business that are in there. A lot of it's a relationship business. Go figure. Insurance is a relationship business. So you're going to have people that leave. So take that into account when looking at agencies. The more you can retain employees and staff and all that stuff, the better. So when you're looking at buying agencies, negotiate somewhere in there, maybe an earn-out clause where someone has to stay on for 6 months, 12 months. It's really important. It could be helpful. But that's what I have when it comes to acquisition. So Derek wants to know, is it better to work on revenue as a number you set things at, or premium? Always. Premium's nice, but revenue is what matters. Revenue is going to be how you're judged. So when you look at, and really on top of that, it's net revenue. Net revenue is going to be kind of like what's left at the end of the day. Now, of course, there'll be some variables taken out of that, like obviously they don't have to account for your salary or rent, or like it's a sliding thing, right? Where there's common sense applied to a lot of it. But revenue is going to be what you're judged on and how you are valued. So that's a great question. Revenue is the most important because revenue pays the bills. So, all right. Any other questions before we hop out of here? It's been 20 minutes. Make sure you guys show up every Wednesday, and we have the link. If you guys want the link to join the live crowd, I like these things to be collaborative. I like these things to be where people are talking about their experiences or thoughts that they have, because I don't have all the answers. There's a lot of people out there who have a lot more or better answers than I do. So with that being said, I'm going to kick this off here. So thank you guys so much for watching.